Welcome to the Believe Podcast, a conversation between friends over a passage of Scripture. I'm Carolyn Kirsten.
And I'm Marvin Williams.
And today is episode 165, beginning Galatians chapter 6 today. These verses are so packed, we're only going through 8 for this episode.
That's right.
But
All right.
Here we go.
So what is the hardest thing about serving other people?
The hardest thing about serving others is when it's inconvenient.
Yeah.
I think it can be easy when it's on my timeline or I've planned ahead for it, but those spontaneous opportunities when maybe it's time I wasn't prepared to give or a resource I, wasn't planning on sharing, those I think are, for me, the hardest.
Yeah. Lack of gratitude and a feeling of entitlement.
There you go. Yeah.
Like I serve someone and no thank you is given, and it's almost as if you should have done this. You want to know one way to get me to not do anything for you is to not say thank you or to feel like I have to do it for you. And again, if we, we're not blasting our kids, but my kids, when they were growing up, again, we teach them thank you. When someone does something for you, say thank you, because people simply don't have to be kind to you. They don't have to give to you. And so your first response ought to be gratitude and thanksgiving. And so anyway, sorry, maybe I was in the flesh right there for a minute. So, but why are we talking about this? Well, this first episode in chapter 6, it really is all about how we serve one another, how we love one another, how we carry one another's burdens. And sometimes there might not be gratitude. Many times there might be inconvenience, and yet part of what it means to love, going back to the previous episodes in chapter 5, is the genuineness of our faith is shown in our love for other people. And one of the ways to show our love for other people is to serve them, and many times serve them in inconvenient moments, and serve them even when they are not they're not grateful. So let's jump into the passage, and we have 1 and 2 right away, and we see we see right away this sense of what our responsibility is and to love other people. It says, brothers, if any is caught in any transgression, you who are spiritual should restore him in a spirit of gentleness. Keep watch on yourselves, lest you too be tempted. Bear one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ. So packed with a lot of good stuff there. So what do we see? Yeah.
So in verse 1, Paul's helping us know how to respond to a believer's sin.
Yeah.
So if someone is overtaken in wrongdoing, what is our job? Sit back, point fingers?
No.
Oh, no. It is to restore with a gentle spirit, or I really like how the NLT says, gently and humbly help that person back onto the right path.
That's good. That is
like
so
it
good.
Just fills out the
that
whole.
Is so good.
Yeah. If you're wondering, okay, what does that mean? Restore with a gentle spirit. Does that just mean
that is so good.
A smile on my face? I like the gently and humbly. You're not thinking you're better than they are. There is no pointing finger or whispers behind. Nope. You are gently and humbly helping that person back onto the right path.
I love that imagery. Someone is kind of veered off.
Yep.
And you're just kind of edging them back
hello,
on.
Hello, friend. Link arms
love
with them.
Love it.
And guiding them back.
Yeah.
That is our response to a believer's sin. We don't always see that. Maybe too often we see the wagging finger, the blast on Instagram. Oh, let's, never have anything to do. Cancel them.
Yeah. Cancel culture. Yeah, absolutely.
Or people in our actual real life, maybe it's a little more subtle and it's just an avoidance or a quietly drifting away as you leave them to suffer. Instead, restoring, bringing them to restoration because you care so much for them that you want to help them back.
And you're resisting pride and you're embracing humility. You're including vulnerability in this regard, and it may be even as you're helping them back onto the right road, or the right path. You're saying you're rehearsing a time when you got off the path, and say, the reason why, man, I can help you back on is not because I'm so much better than you are, but because I remember a time when I got off the path, someone needed to gently restore me, and I'm just simply paying it forward. And I just want you to know, again, this whole looking at the entire book, but particularly in these last 2 chapters, love has been mentioned over and over and over again. And so to help someone back on the right path, it's clearly motivated by love, not by judgment, not by shame, not by comparison or I'm better than you are, wagging your finger, as you said, but really because I love you. And I don't want to see you suffer some of the things that I suffered when I got off the path. And so, again, it's just filled with this sense of mutuality.
Yeah.
And
that rolls right into verse 2 where it says, carry one another's burdens.
Yeah.
So it is mutual. I'm carrying your burdens. You're carrying mine. We're together in this. It's not one person's dealing with all of it. But let's talk a little bit about that.
Okay.
What does that mean? And what doesn't it mean to carry someone's burden?
Yeah, you may even ask the question, how much do I carry anyway? And really this carrying one another's burdens, like, when I see you struggling, because of my love for you, I am going to support you, encourage you. I'm not doing it for you. I'm walking alongside. I'm coming alongside to encourage you to live in a way that honors Christ. Or if you're dealing with pain or sickness, or if you're dealing with the struggle of how to read the Bible or how to pray, my job is to come alongside to maybe even teach if I can, but not necessarily to do it for you.
Yeah.
We're all going to be held accountable for our actions. So I think there is this sense where I am simply coming alongside and holding up your arms as much as I can, as you do the things that God has called you to do. And so we do have a mutual responsibility to one another.
And it's interesting in verse 2, he says, carry one another's burdens. And then in verse 5, he says, for each person will have to carry his own load, which sounds like those are opposites. But I think it is getting to what you're saying, that yes, we have things that we are responsible. We're not freeloading
absolutely
on someone else and dumping, if we find ourselves in a position where someone is completely dependent on us, whether that's financial, emotional, they're just sucking all of the resources from you and not taking care of themselves. That's each person needs to carry his own load.
Yeah.
And we carry each other's loads.
Yeah.
There are seasons when I may need more support.
Absolutely.
Than another season, or it's a strengths and weaknesses thing. That's ways we carry each other's loads. I have things to offer you.
Absolutely.
Maybe it's a little more details in plans and calendaring and that sort of thing. And you have things that I don't have. You can help me. And so it is both, even though those seem contradictory. Paul is intentional in that. And that is a way we work together.
Yeah, and I think, and a practical example of this is this whole idea of mutuality. And we all have been, either we've been guilty of this or we've seen this, where someone, we're kind of dumping on someone, and I mean that in a very positive way. I'm sharing my, what's happening in my life. I'm sharing and sharing and sharing. And then I get to the end and I leave. And I don't ask you. So, Carolyn, how are you doing? Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes we can become selfish in an unintended way, because I'm coming to you because I want you to help carry my load. And part of the mutuality comes is, Carolyn, I've been talking about myself this entire time. Thank you for what you've shared. but let me ask you, how are you doing? That's the mutuality.
Yeah.
And for you to be able to share, something, there is something you can pray for me about, is I have this big thing coming up and I'm really anxious right now. And let me pray for you in this moment. So there's this mutuality that takes place. But I think sometimes unintentionally we come and we get ours and we jet. And as opposed to, what does it look like for us to carry one another's loads, even in a moment where the main response is to, I've come to you for help. But I can actually say, Carolyn, how can I pray for you and how can I support you and encourage you? And so there's this mutual love that Paul is talking about here that I think is super, super important.
Yeah, and then in verse 7, he switches to a little farming analogy.
Yep.
And he says, don't be deceived. God is not mocked. For whatever a person sows, he will also reap.
Yeah.
And that, is just a good piece of wisdom right there. What you sow, what you plant, you will reap. You're not going to sow carrot seeds and then find, it's corn after all.
Yeah,
Nope.
right.
What you sow, what you put in, or another way to say that, what you put in is what you will get out of it. We have lots of just classic wisdom, conventional wisdom related to that. It does make me ask the question, okay, what am I sowing today? Am I sowing, to go back to previous episode, am I sowing to the flesh or am I sowing to the spirit? Because whatever I'm sowing, that is what I will harvest. What I put in is what is going to come out. My choices have consequences.
Absolutely.
I can't think
Absolutely.
that I just fill my mind and my time with empty fluff that somehow I'm going to become a mature Christian on the other side of that. If I'm not willing to put in time and commitment to knowing God, growing in my relationship with Him, I'm silly if I think that I will continue to grow as in my maturity if I'm not sowing anything to that.
Such a good point, and I think it happens mysteriously.
Yeah.
We wonder why people aren't patient with us, and we have to ask the question: I wonder if I've sown impatience with other people. I wonder why people are not fighting for my highest possible good. Maybe it's because I've not done the same thing for others. If this is a true and wise statement agriculturally, then it is going to be the same thing as it relates to the spirit and our sinful nature. If I'm always angry about something, then I'm sowing anger, then I'm going to reap it someplace else. When someone is, angry with me, and it's like, it's not even that serious. Well, oh man, I have to start thinking, man, what have I sown in the past that I'm now reaping right now with the way people have responded to me? And so again, all of this is sobering, very, very sobering in terms of, even going back to the previous episode, the works of the flesh are these things. So does that mean I'm not keeping in step with the Spirit? If I'm constantly angry, constantly divisive, then the Spirit of God must not be allowing Him to work in my heart. And so this is pure agriculture. It works. You just mentioned, there's no way you're going to plant carrot seeds or watermelon seeds and get apples and oranges. That would be a real something's wrong
Just
with your soil.
Impossibility. Yes.
Impossibility. And so again, this is, I think, really, really key here. What I sow, my choices have consequences, and let's make sure we're sowing really, really good in good soil. That is the works of the Spirit. In 9 and 10. Again, this is another one of those familiar passages. Or no, we're
Let's
not going
save
there.
that
We're going to save
for the next
that.
episode.
Yes.
But I do think. Did you want to say something about verses 3 and 4?
Yeah. So so again, this is guarding against pride and self-deception. So the text says, if anyone thinks they are something when they are not, they deceive themselves, and each one should test their own actions. And so again, this is the idea that pride can blind us to our weaknesses and actually lead us to judge other people harshly. And so self-examination is all about, Spirit of God, would you please help me to see what's happening in my own heart so that I am not deceived, so that I can look at my blind spots, and so that so I don't be found judging other people. We measure ourselves against God's standards, not against one another. And again, we come back to this. Maybe this is the third or fourth time we've mentioned this. Comparing our lives to other people, it's a no-win situation. But when we compare our lives to God's standards, to Christ's life, then we don't have time to worry about where other people are in their journey, their race. But we can make sure that we are living up to the standards that Christ has given, and not be distracted by what other people or what's happening with other people.
Yeah, it is interesting that we do have a desire to compare, and comparing ourselves with others is fruitless and even damaging. But maybe it's turning that desire to compare, if we're reflecting on ourselves, which is what I was just encouraging us to do. Like, and you gave some good examples, like, what am I sowing today? Or what am I reaping today that reflects what I had been sowing? That kind of self-reflection, not how am I doing comparing to this other person and measuring myself compared to others, but taking the time for self-reflection, and it's really before God instead of comparing myself to others. That is beneficial. That sort of self-reflection of it's how do I measure up to others, but what, in this case, what this passage is calling us to, what am I sowing today? Or what am I harvesting today? And what is that revealing about what I have sown to?
Absolutely.
And making adjustments, not based on how we compare to others, but by what Holy Spirit reveals to us. In that kind of reflection.
And a distinction should be made here that there's nothing wrong with admiring another person's walk.
For
to
sure.
Say,
learning from others, mentors.
Man, I really, really appreciate the way can you teach me how to do that? So there's a difference between admiring and then making the comparison. And, and now my Christian walk is a competition with another person. And again, as you mentioned, that's a lose-lose situation. And so let's keep admiring those who are a little bit further ahead of us and learn from them. But let's not compare ourselves to them. But as you mentioned, to examine ourselves, to see what I've sown, what I'm reaping, and to say, how can I grow in my walk with Jesus in this next season? So, so again, a lot of good stuff in this first episode in chapter 6. What can we learn about God, ourselves, and others even?
Yeah, kind of putting it together. I think I am grateful that God gives us each other. I mean, that is a part of the joy of living in community with other believers, where we can carry each other's burdens for us. And I love that God gave us people with skin on so we could experience his love and his care through the love of other people that are in our lives. And that requires, on my part, vulnerability. That requires back to it requires gentleness and humility on my part, if that's restoring someone who's gotten off the path. But just the whole experience of authentic community is something I'm grateful for, and is such a beautiful aspect of our life with Christ.
Yeah. I think for me, God's law of agriculture is just as viable in the spiritual life as it is in the natural and physical world. And God has given us this law to help us understand our choices, that every day we have an opportunity to make spiritually transformative choices, that we don't make these choices because, oh, this is what I'm planting and I hope to pick it up and I hope to get it in days to come. It's just a matter of this is what I'm planting. I'm intentional. So farmers intentionally plant, and we have to intentionally plant these seeds if we're going to see kind of the fruit of the Spirit cropping up in our lives and in other people's lives as well. So God's law of agriculture works well in the natural, but it also works well in the spiritual. And I have to make intentional choices every day to sow to the Spirit and not the flesh. Yeah.
Good stuff. Thank you, friends, for joining us. We would love to hear from you and interact with you, whether that is leaving a rating and review on your podcast player. I think you can make comments on episodes on Spotify now. You can join in the Trinity app, the Believe podcast group. We can have conversation there. Follow us on the YouTube channel. Lots of ways that you can add interaction, and we would love to continue the conversation with you beyond just the episodes. Thanks for joining us.